The grand auditorium of the Galactic Xenobiology Institute on Xylos Prime was a cathedral of knowledge. Its vaulted ceiling shimmered with holographic projections of 1,000 different worlds, each one a testament to the fragile, beautiful ways life could adapt to the cold darkness of space. Today, the hall was packed. Representatives from 17 different spacefaring species had gathered, their multi-limbed bodies and diverse environmental suits a stark reminder of the universe's variety. They had come to hear the final, peer-reviewed findings of the most respected xenobiologist of the age, Dr. Vleetic of the crustacean-like Quark species. Dr. Vleetic stood at the central podium, his four-manipulator arms shuffling data slates with a nervous, precise energy. His exoskeleton, a deep cobalt blue, clicked softly as he adjusted his vocal modulator. The Quark were a cautious, methodical people who evolved on a world with a gentle 0.3G gravity, where the tallest trees reached for miles and the oceans were shallow, warm, and forgiving. For them, the universe was a place of soft forces. Esteemed colleagues, Dr. Vleetic began, his voice a synthesized hum that translated perfectly into the earpieces of every being present. After 80 cycles of research, analyzing data from over 12,000 classified worlds, my team and I have reached an undeniable conclusion. We have discovered a universal constant, a filter so absolute that it defines the very boundary of habitability. He tapped a claw on the podium. The great holographic display behind him changed. A chart appeared, showing a beautiful, bell-shaped curve. The x-axis was labeled gravity standard units. The y-axis was labeled probability of complex life. The curve peaked at a cozy 0 for G, then dropped sharply. By 0.7 G, it was near 0. At 1.0 G, the line was flat, dead. Gravity, Dr. Vleetic announced, his voice dropping to a somber whisper. The silent sculptor. It is not radiation, not temperature, not atmospheric composition that is the great limiter. It is the weight of the world itself. Our research shows, with a statistical certainty of 99.97%, that any planet with a surface gravity of 1G or higher cannot, and will not ever develop complex, multicellular life. The constant, crushing force prevents the formation of effective circulatory systems, destroys skeletal integrity, and suffocates the very cellular processes that lead to intelligence. A murmur rippled through the audience. The slender, avian-like Relans nodded sagely. Their homeworld was a delicate 0 to G. The stocky, reptilian Drakir looked uncomfortable. Their world was a heavy 0.8 G, and they had always felt the strain. This new law explained their constant joint pain. It was a cosmic relief. They were not flawed. Their world was simply an outlier, a statistical error on the brink of impossibility. Therefore, Dr. Vleetic continued, growing in confidence, any species claiming to originate from a super-Earth, a world of 1G or more, is scientifically impossible. Such claims are either the result of mistaken planetary records, deliberate deception, or more likely a misunderstanding of their own evolutionary history. Life cannot begin, let alone thrive, under such tyranny. He paused for effect. Gravity of 1G is, by every biological metric we possess, universally fatal. The silence that followed was one of profound intellectual satisfaction. A universal truth had been spoken. The universe made sense again. Then, a sound cut through the reverence. It was a soft, rhythmic thump-thump. And another dot. It was the sound of a single being, applauding slowly. Every head in the auditorium turned. Every eye, whether compound, lens-based, or organic, focused on a figure sitting alone in the back row of the ambassador's gallery. The being was unremarkable to look at: medium height, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head with flat, forward-facing eyes. It wore a simple blue tunic and what looked like heavy, black boots. It was a human. Ambassador Elias Vance of the United Terran Federation. He stood up. The motion was not graceful by local standards. It was heavy, deliberate. The floor plating under his feet gave a barely audible groan. He began to walk down the central aisle, and with every step, that same soft thump-thump echoed. To the assembled aliens, it sounded like a pile driver. To Elias, it was just Tuesday. He stopped at the edge of the podium, looking up at Dr. Vleetic. The Quark scholar was a good 3 feet taller than the human, but at this moment, he seemed to shrink. Dr. Vleetic, Elias said, his voice calm, conversational. No translator needed. He spoke fluent Galactic, his accent a bit rough. Fascinating presentation, truly, but I have a small question. He placed his hands on the edge of the podium. The reinforced polyalloy creaked. Dr. Vliegtek's eye stalks retracted in alarm. You said 1G gravity is fatal to all species, Elias continued, tilting his head. It's a universal filter. A hard limit, he smiled. It was a friendly smile, but to the Quark, it showed too many flat, grinding teeth. Then how? Elias asked, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent hall. Do I still exist? For a full 5 seconds, no one moved. Then, chaos. The Reelan delegates squawked and fluttered their wings. The Drakir hissed and tapped their claws on the floor. A dozen different translation systems glitched as everyone tried to speak at once. Dr. Vliegtek simply stared, his mandibles hanging open. The question was absurd. It was like asking why water was dry. The answer was self-evident. That is not possible, Vliegtek finally stammered. Your species. You are a statistical anomaly, a low-G species that evolved on a high-G world. You must be adapted. Your bones are hollow. Your circulatory system is external. Elias chuckled, a low rumble. No, doctor. My bones are filled with marrow. Quite dense, actually. He rolled up his sleeve, revealing a forearm. It wasn't muscular in the way the Quark expected. It was just a solid. And my heart is about the size of my fist. Pushes my blood through a closed system under about 120 millimeters of mercury pressure. Pretty standard, really. He tapped his temple. My brain is suspended in fluid, but gravity still pulls on it. Makes you feel heavy after a long day. But fatal. Doc, I was born in 1G. I slept in 1G as a baby. I learned to walk in 1G. You want to see what's fatal? He looked around the auditorium at the delicate, slender forms of the other species. To me, this room is a death trap. He walked over to a side table where a carafe of water sat for the Drakir delegates. He picked it up, a simple glass container holding about 2 liters. He held it out. This weighs about 2 kilograms here. On my world, it would be nearly 2.5. On your world, Dr. Vliegtek's homeworld of Core, this same water would feel like a feather. Your muscles, your bones, your entire biology is built for a gentle tug. For me, 3G is like living in a dream. I could jump over your tallest buildings. I could throw your largest predator across a canyon. He put the carafe down and looked at the frozen, horrified faces. But the reverse is the problem. You see, Doctor, your universal constant is correct from your point of view. From the point of view of a being from 0, for G or less, 1G is fatal. You would come to my world, and your heart would fail in minutes. Your skeleton would shatter under its own weight. Your lungs wouldn't have the strength to push the air out. You are correct. 1G kills your kind. He stepped closer to the podium. And Vliegtek instinctively backed away, his claws clicking on the floor in a rapid, fearful rhythm. But you made the classic mistake, Elias said, his voice losing its humor and gaining a hard edge. You assumed the universe evolved to fit your comfort. You found a pattern among your data from your limited sample of the galaxy, and you declared it a law. You didn't ask why the filter existed. You just assumed nothing could be on the other side. He turned to face the audience, spreading his arms wide. My world is called Earth. Surface gravity. 1G exactly. Day length. 24 hours. Atmosphere. 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, a corrosive, reactive, fire-loving gas that should, by your charts, make complex life impossible. We have earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes that can lift houses, and oceans that freeze and boil depending on where you stand. And you know what? Life didn't just survive there. It thrived. He started pacing, his heavy footsteps a punctuation mark. You see a high-gravity world as a forge of death. We see it as a forge of strength. Every creature on Earth, from the smallest insect to the largest whale, is built to fight that 1G pull. Our bones are dense. Our muscles are efficient. Our hearts are powerful. We don't just live in 1G. We evolved because of it. It's the fire that tempered our steel. He stopped and pointed at the holographic chart, still glowing with its deadly curve. Your chart says no complex life at 1G, but look at me. I am complex. I am standing here, breathing your thin, low oxygen air which, by the way, feels like a gentle breeze to me, and I am not dying. I am not struggling. I am having a conversation. Dr. Vliegtek's mind was reeling. He tried to find a flaw, but the cellular structure, the skeletal loading, the circulatory strain, Asterisk all solved, Elias interrupted, not unkindly. By evolution. By millions of years of dying. The weak ones died. The ones who couldn't run, who couldn't lift, who couldn't pump blood up to their brains against 1G of pull. They didn't become our ancestors. We are the product of that constant, brutal pressure. And the result, he clenched his fist, and the leather of his glove creaked, is a species that you, Doctor, just declared impossible. He looked back at the frozen chart. So here's the real universal constant, Doctor. It's not gravity. It's not radiation. It's not even time. The only universal constant is that life finds a way to adapt to the conditions it is given. And sometimes, the harsher the conditions, the more interesting the life becomes. He walked back to his seat, but he didn't sit down. He leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. The thump-thump of his footsteps faded, but the impact of his words was just beginning. For a long moment, the hall was silent. Then, a single Drachyr delegate raised a clawed hand. Ambassador Vance, the reptilian said, his voice a low hiss. You speak of your world's dangers with pride. But if your kind is so strong, so dense, why have you not conquered the galaxy? Why do you sit in this room as equals? Elias smiled again, but this time it was a sad smile. Because, delegate, strength is not the same as cruelty. We learned that lesson the hard way. On our own world, we spent thousands of years using our strength to dominate each other. We built empires that crumbled under the weight of their own brutality. We created weapons that could shatter continents. And then, one day, we looked up at the stars and realized something. He pointed a thumb at his chest. We are the monster under the bed. We are the thing that the rest of the galaxy fears in its darkest dreams. A species from a death world, strong enough to break your bones with a handshake. Fast enough to outrun most of your prey. Durable enough to survive vacuum for short periods. And stubborn enough to never, ever give up. He looked around the room. If we wanted to conquer you, we could, easily. Your ships are fast, but ours are armored. Your weapons are precise, but ours are designed to withstand the fury of a 1G world's tectonic rage. Your soldiers, forgive me, but your soldiers are adapted to low gravity. They have the bone density of our elderly. A single human marine in full combat gear would be, to your species, a walking natural disaster. He let that sink in. The silence was now terrified. But we don't want to conquer you, he said, his voice softening, because we've seen where that road ends. It ends with us alone, surrounded by ash and regret. So we chose a different path. We chose to be the guardians. The ones who lift the heavy things. The ones who go into the burning reactor. The ones who stand between the monster and the weak. Because we can. Because our whole existence has been a lesson in enduring the unbearable. He pushed off from the wall and walked toward the exit. At the door, he paused and looked back at Dr. Vleektik, who was still standing frozen at the podium. Doctor, Elias said, your research is not wrong. For 99% of the galaxy, 1G is a death sentence. Never send a colonization mission to a 1G world. The warning is valid. But don't call it a universal law. Call it a warning label. And next time you write a paper, maybe add a footnote, except for humans. They're just built different. He left. The doors hissed shut behind him. The silence held for another 10 seconds. Then, Dr. Vleektik's arms dropped to his sides. He looked at his perfect, beautiful chart, the curve that explained the universe. And for the first time in his long, respected career, he realized that his data was incomplete. He had measured the filter. He had not measured what could survive on the other side. He cleared his throat. The law the meeting is adjourned, he said, his voice barely a whisper. But no one was listening. They were all staring at the empty doorway, wondering what other impossible things were walking around the galaxy, pretending to be ordinary. Later that cycle, in the quiet of his private quarters aboard the Terran diplomatic vessel Steadfast, Ambassador Elias Vance sat in a standard-issue chair. The chair groaned under his weight. Ship gravity was set to a comfortable 0.8G, a compromise for visiting aliens. For him, it felt like wearing a heavy backpack. He didn't mind. He was used to carrying weight. A soft chime came from his communicator. It was a priority message from Earth. He opened it. It was a short video from his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. She was in their backyard on a sunny afternoon, chasing their dog, a huge, drooling mastiff. The dog was built like a small tank. Lily was laughing, her dark hair flying. Behind her, the grass was green, the sky was blue, and the gravity was an invisible, unforgiving 9.8 meters per second squared. Daddy, she shouted into the camera. I climbed the big oak tree all by myself. Grandma said I was a monkey. Elias smiled, his eyes crinkling. The oak tree was 40 feet tall. The fall from the top would shatter Ryland's bones like glass. To Lily, it was a playground. He typed back, "That's my girl. Be careful. And remind Grandma that humans are not monkeys. We're better. We're the ones who climbed down from the trees, walked across the savannah, and looked up at the stars." He closed the message and leaned back. The chair creaked again. He looked out the viewport at the swirling nebula of Xylos Prime, a beautiful, delicate cloud of gas and dust. Somewhere out there, a Quark scholar was rewriting his life's work. Somewhere out there, a dozen alien governments were updating their threat assessments. And somewhere out there, on a blue-green marble-called Earth, a little girl was climbing an oak tree. Defying a gravity that the rest of the galaxy called a tomb, Elias Vance closed his eyes. The universe was full of impossible things. He was proud to be one of them. The next morning, Dr. Vlichtek requested a private meeting. He found Elias in the ship's gymnasium, a small, reinforced chamber that the Terran engineers had added as an afterthought. The human was lifting a bar loaded with heavy metal discs. Vlichtek's environmental suit sensors told him the bar weighed approximately 400 kilograms more than a full-grown Drak here. The human was lifting it over his head, repeatedly, while humming a tune. "Ambassador," Vlichtek said, his voice trembling slightly. Elias set the bar down with a thunderous clang that made the Quark's legs buckle. "Doctor, come to apologize. I came to understand," Vlichtek said, stepping cautiously into the room. "Your existence. It has broken my model. I have no framework for you. You are a walking contradiction." Elias wiped his face with a towel. "Good. Contradictions are how science advances. If everything fits, you're not looking hard enough." He sat down on a bench and gestured for Vlichtek to do the same. The Quark hesitated, then perched on the edge of a reinforced stool, his claws gripping the sides. "Ask your questions," Elias said. And Vlichtek did. For 2 hours, he asked about bone density, about muscle fiber composition, about the human heart, about the spine, about the joints, about the way blood traveled upward against gravity. Elias answered each one patiently, using simple words, drawing diagrams on a data pad. He talked about calcium, about hemoglobin, about the vestibular system that gave humans balance. He talked about how human babies had soft spots in their skulls to survive birth. He talked about how human spines curved in an S shape to absorb shock. He talked about varicose veins and back pain, and all the little ways that 1G tried to kill them every single day and how they just kept going. At the end, Vlichtek was silent. His eye stalks were withdrawn, his mind churning. "So you are not immune," the Quark finally said. "You are not gods. You are simply stubborn." Elias laughed, a full, hearty laugh. "Doctor, you just defined humanity in one word. Stubborn. Yes, that's us. We are the species that looks at a wall and says, 'I'll go through it.' We look at an ocean and say, 'I'll cross it.' We look at the void of space and say, 'I'll live there.' Gravity is just another wall. And we are very, very good at climbing walls." He stood up and offered his hand. Vlichtek stared at the extended appendage. He knew the human gesture, a handshake, a sign of trust. He reached out one of his manipulator claws and wrapped it around Elias's palm. The human's grip was firm, but not crushing, controlled. Vlichtek felt the dense bones, the warm skin, the steady pulse of an impossible heart. "So what do we do now?" Vlichtek asked. "Now," Elias said, releasing his grip. "Now, you go back to your institute and you rewrite your paper. But this time, don't call it a law. Call it a question. And at the end, leave it open. Say, 'This is what we know. But there may be exceptions. And those exceptions may be the most important things we ever find.'" Vlichtek nodded slowly. He turned to leave, then stopped. "Ambassador, one more question. Your daughter, you spoke of her. She climbs trees in 1G. What will she become?" Elias looked out the viewport, toward the distant, invisible speck of Earth. "She will become whatever she wants, Doctor. That's the real human superpower. Not strength, not endurance, choice. She will choose her path. And then she will walk it. In 1G or without complaint." He smiled. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have another 200 kilograms to lift. Keeps the old bones strong, Vleekdek left the gymnasium, his mind full of new thoughts. Behind him, the clang of the barbell resumed. It was the sound of a species that refused to be filtered. The sound of the universe's most stubborn mistake. And somewhere, far away, a little girl named Lily climbed higher into the oak tree, laughing as the wind tried to pull her down. It failed. It always did.